For many Americans, family history is a trajectory that points east. We sift through digital archives and census rolls, tracing a lineage backward across the Atlantic to find where the story began. By the late 19th century, that story usually led to a specific corridor. Irish immigrant families established deep roots in the urban centers of New York and the growing suburbs of Long Island. We bridge the gap using a meticulous paper trail. Birth certificates link to marriage licenses, which eventually lead back to the passenger manifests and immigration logs of the late 1800s. These records often terminate at a single point of departure, Cove, then known as Queenstown. This was the massive port in County Cork where the Atlantic crossing began for millions. Following these established emigration routes provides a sense of continuity. The records align, the dates connect, and the trajectory feels certain, until the documentation reaches its limit. Take the Charde family of Cove. By the mid-1800s, they appear entirely integrated into Irish life, using repetitive Catholic naming conventions, like John Patrick for their sons. They intermarried with indigenous Gaelic families, like Dowling and Horgan. But the paper trail hits a catastrophic interruption in 1847. Black 47, the peak of the Great Famine, claimed Mary Ann. Her husband, Richard Charde, born 1804, has no documented parents, the genealogical brick wall. Richard's presence forces us to look at the name itself. Charde carries a French orthography that seems out of place in a Gaelic-speaking Catholic port. This is the limit of traditional research. When the tax ledgers and baptismal books end, we are left with a name that seems to contradict the cultural identity of the people who carried it. Consider 1685. Thousands of French Protestants, Huguenots, fled to Cork to escape persecution, bringing their distinct surnames and faith into the local landscape. But the roots might be deeper. In 1169, Anglo-Norman conquerors arrived in Ireland. They spoke a dialect of Old French and planted occupational surnames across Cork 5 centuries before the Huguenots arrived. There were also the English plantations of the 1500s. Settlers arrived from the English West Country, including the town of Charde in Somerset, introducing habitation names that could easily be mistaken for French. Even further back, Norse Vikings founded Cork in the 900s. They settled the exact island where Cove stands today, leaving behind personal names that evolved phonetically over 1,000 years. Or, the French appearance is an illusion. An English clerk struggling to record the Gaelic name Charde might have used a French-sounding spelling as a phonetic approximation. A single Irish port contains the remnants of 5 distinct European migrations. Because these groups overlapped for centuries, the name alone cannot tell us which path Richard Charde's ancestors took. That terminal E in Charde is often just a scribal choice, a momentary decision by an individual clerk that became permanent as the family became literate. This creates the layering problem. By the late 1800s, families from all these distinct migrations had shared the same geography and intermarried for generations. After centuries of assimilation, a descendant of a 17th century Huguenot and a descendant of a 12th century Norman appear identical in a Victorian census. When historical compression erases these distinctions, the spelling of a name ceases to be a reliable map of a family's origins. When the archives fall silent, we have to look past the written record and move into the biological one. The Y chromosome passes from father to son unchanged across thousands of years, following the exact path as the surname. Standard DNA tests mix genetics from all ancestors, fading after a few generations. To see the deep paternal line, we isolate the Y chromosome. By matching a specific haplogroup against global databases, we can determine if a lineage is truly Gaelic, Scandinavian, or continental French. Genetic data bypasses the errors of scribes and the physical destruction of archives, providing geographical coordinates for a family's deep past that paper cannot reach. A surname is a historical palimpsest, a record overwritten by centuries of invasion, survival, and local assimilation. There may be a millennium of migration preserved in the sequence of your DNA, documenting travels that predated the first written records of your family. Genealogy relies on the ink of our ancestors until that ink fades. From there, the story continues in our blood.